Chainsaw Man as a series was an explosion waiting to happen. Even before its adaptation, the manga had absolutely skyrocketing sales and was essentially a smash hit. The anime adaptation served to catapult the series' popularity to even greater heights. With ever-increasing popularity also comes with an influx of eyes on the series that might not fully understand the messages the series is trying to deliver. And to some extent, that's fine. Not everyone reads or watches a story to be fully 100% invested and to dissect every theme or message from it. Some people just want to watch stuff. If you're a casual viewer, CSM is just a very enjoyable high-action shonen, and that's cool. It's a series that's enjoyable for both kinds of viewers, dangling rawness in front of you but also something more, as it dangles quite a few what would be average shonen tropes but puts a unique spin on them. It presents someone who on the surface is your stereotypical MC. It presents some of your usual perviness that at some point in time was basically synonymous with anime, but it's almost a misdirection. People who only got a bit into Chainsaw Man or don't know much about the series hear about this very explicit content and assume that it's a very surface-level horny series. And for a certain extent of the series, it's a reasonable interpretation to have. It takes its time peeling back the layers of its messaging, and this is perfectly demonstrated through the protagonist, Denji. He is essentially a shonen protagonist to a T. He acts pretty dumb, he has a big appetite, he has a simple goal, he wants to touch some boobs. This is something that has been memed to hell and back. Oh my god, he's just like me! Of course, a lot of it is just jokes, but there are people that interpret this as the only thing to Denji's character, when it couldn't be further from the truth. Denji was a boy in severe poverty, essentially enslaved to pay off a debt that wasn't his, isolated in what amounts to a shack in the woods and doomed to slowly wither away, his body falling apart and rapidly barreling towards the finish line. Denji was fully content living in that shack with his sole connection to Pochita, living life at the bare minimum of having barely any shelter and eating a slice of bread a day if he's lucky. As a boy, he had only lived to be used. He didn't think towards the future, just about today and tomorrow. Living like this in your formative years will eventually lead to you becoming tunnel-visioned, or never seeing a bigger picture because what's the point? This poverty-stricken, starving and isolated boy was then murdered by the people who abused him. A murder that ended up severing the only connection he had in this world, as a devil became his heart. This new heart is something that would vastly expand the world of the boy who knew so little, introduce so many new facets and faces to the boy that he could only hopelessly grope his way through what amounts to a new reality. That's why, when confronted with a future, Denji feels the desire to come up with a goal, and with his narrow worldview and lack of life experience, craves the one thing he can think of. It's boobs. Outside of Pochita, who is now gone, Denji was never given the opportunity to form bonds during his formative years. He was instead used and abused and treated as a tool to generate wealth, being completely alienated, not only from his labor, but from humanity to some extent. He was never given the chance to dream big, making money to attempt to narrowly escape debt, being treated like a dog, and that dog treatment extends to after he is freed from the Yakuza. People recognize this childish naivety in Denji, taking advantage of his lack of emotional connection, his lack of emotional experience, and his lack of social understanding to treat him like the hungry dog he perceives himself to be, giving him the baseline necessities for life and never expanding his horizons. He is someone who never got to really have familial connections either, and after years of cruelty and abuse, the first person he meets beyond the Yakuza embraces him, giving him this feeling of maternal love that Denji had never got to experience. In an interview, Fujimoto, the author, stated that Makima's name was supposed to be a reference to cutting a tree with an electric saw to become a mother. He also asked fans to Google the reason chainsaws were initially invented, and that very telling reason is to assist during childbirth. Also, funny thing is that Google Docs wanted to correct Makima's name to Mama. Just a funny little thing while writing. People tend to have a knee-jerk reaction to the idea of Denji's attachment to Makima being one of seeking maternal love because of Denji's initial desire for sexual intimacy, but this is once again a result of his lack of an upbringing. What he believes in his narrow scope is that all there is to this life is eating toast with jam and touching boobs, but what he unconsciously yearns for is the sole act of that sexual intimacy, as evidenced by when he finally does achieve that goal, it's hollow. He gets to cop a feel and feels absolutely nothing. This was the biggest turning point for Denji's character early on, because what Denji wants is companionship. At such a young age, however, he is unaware that companionship and intimacy are two separate concepts, and Denji's quest to touch a boob was only a surface-level appraisal of what he truly believes he wants. He is a stray dog who lacks the social skills to understand that he is being taken in by a woman who notes this weakness within him, and takes advantage of it. For every "God, I wish that were me" when it comes to Denji, something you have to realize is that he is first and foremost a victim. He may be horny because he is a teenager, and I don't think it's right to shoo away all of his natural urges, but Makima is very clearly playing into his desire for intimacy and a mother figure to add fuel to that fire and manipulate him. Denji is kinda dumb, like iconic anime protagonists, but because he was denied an education. Denji has a big appetite, like other huge anime characters, but because he lived under the harsh cruelty of food scarcity. He has the orphan backstory and faces extremely dangerous situations for his age repeatedly. He has a simple goal, embodying a lot of the core traits of some of the most prolific anime characters in history, but when you look beyond the surface, it's just kind of sad. He's a lonely, unwell boy who is being taken advantage of at every turn in his life. If you weren't convinced by Denji achieving his goal and feeling empty, the Katana Man arc absolutely blows open the reality of Denji's character. Let's note something real quick here. There is something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's an idea in psychology presented by Abraham Maslow in 1943 in a paper titled A Theory of Human Motivation. It's not something that is widely agreed upon in academia, but is something that is of interest with regards to Denji in particular. At the bottom of this pyramid, we have physiological needs. Things like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, and clothing. At the start of the story, this is where even younger Denji was trapped. Above that, you have safety needs, which can have personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. These are things that Denji has now acquired by getting a job in public safety. However, ultimately, what they are material items. The third section, love and belonging, is where Denji hits a brick wall. Friendship, intimacy, family, and sense of connection. Things that are immaterial. Things that cannot be purchased, but something interpersonal. Without the feeling of belonging, people can quickly fall into loneliness, anxiety, and depression. It is a need that is especially strong in childhood, sometimes overriding the need for safety, as witnessed in children who end up clinging to abusive parents or even abusive situations. Denji catches a glimpse into his true desires through Himeno, somebody who is likely not 15 years old like Denji, and also nearly took advantage of him. She of course did eventually go, oh shit, my bad, but this is a very important scene for Denji. This is an entire scene where somebody is literally offering to have sex with him, and he doesn't accept it. It's a choice he doesn't regret either. Even when he thinks back on it, Denji had the opportunity to fulfill his sexual desires, but doesn't accept that offer. After this, they finally encounter Katana Man, who for all intents and purposes stands as the complete opposite of Denji. While having the core similarity that both of their hearts have been replaced by a devil, when he first encounters Denji, he brags about the amount of food he gets to eat as a child, mocking the poor boy's unrefined palate. He speaks about a parental figure that had cared for him, something that Denji lacked and what he had taken from Katana Man. He could get anything he wanted whenever he wanted, focusing purely on the material while Denji struggled with the immaterial. The man brags repeatedly about all the items of material desire he could have, but what he neglects are connections, the sole thing Denji truly desires. Never does he really speak to the character of the Yakuza boss, only hoisting him up for the things he provided him, and in his fight with Denji, he even cuts to his comrades if it means victory. Katana Man doesn't fight for his lost connections like he displays on the surface, but he fights for revenge over losing his source of material possessions, while Denji fights for what he believes are material possessions and a baseline level of living, but what he truly desires is companionship. So what truly gets to him after the fight isn't that he lost or anything superficial like that. What truly tears him up for a moment is his indifference towards his comrade's death, and ponders if he still has a human heart. This creates a very interesting dichotomy between human and devil hearts, as Katana Man fights for surface level reasoning and postures about it being deep, and Denji fights for connections while believing his heart had been replaced by a devil who, mind you, had sacrificed himself to save Denji's life, showing us that a devil's heart isn't so different. While he acknowledges he was attracted to Himeno, he doesn't see her as Miss Potential or just a dead hot woman in some fucked up, twisted way that episode 2 Denji might lead you to believe, but what we instead get is something far more profound. The way he perceives her is instead the first person who ever wanted to be his friend. The first person that didn't want to kill him on sight or lead him by the nose, but someone who inquired about who he is as a person. What Denji seeks isn't explicitly sexual intimacy. It's not something that is off the table, but it's something he can pursue in the future. What he needs right here and right now is connection, to fulfill that need of love and belonging so that he can move on to esteem and self-actualization. We get a very nice scene of Denji's growth in the hospital scene with Aki that shows Denji building towards that feeling of belonging. After Himeno dies in the Katana Man fight, before Denji leaves to go meet with Makima and Kishibe, he hesitates for a second. Aki is completely destroyed by the loss of his comrade, and Denji does something incredibly kind. He gives him an apple. This is a small gesture. I mean, it's literally just an apple, but to someone like Denji, who had lived his entire life under such severe food scarcity, To reach out and offer something that he still holds in such high esteem, such as sustenance, to his sad comrade, is a massive sign of compassion and growth from him. It isn't just about sex. It isn't just about grabbing boobs or murderizing the enemy or eating great food. What Chainsaw Man is about is self-actualization. A boy climbing his way out of harsh poverty and 15 years into his life, trying to decide what he wants to do, what he wants to be, learning how to build connections, and finding his own identity in such a complex world. Denji is a phenomenal character, and I cannot wait for the rest of Chainsaw Man to be adapted. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the funny YouTube algorithm. You can check the description down below to follow me on Twitter, where I'm objectively correct all the time. You can also join my Discord, where we talk about My Hero Academia, ReZero, Jujutsu Kaisen, and stuff like that. And you can also now become a YouTube member, which basically just gives you access to behind-the-scenes content, a little badge on comments, and live stream chats, and access to some emotes. Only do so if you want to support the channel, though. But that's about it, though. Thank you for watching. See ya.